I first met Pablo Medina years back when he released his popular Cubana fonts on floppy disk, I believe. Our paths have crossed several times since then, and his work was included in New Vintage Type, a book I worked on with Steve Heller a few years back. Pablo and I finally sat down to lunch in the fall of 2010, and he told me of his plans to head to San Francisco to do a 4-month artist in residence program at California College of Art. I was so intrigued by what he was going to do, studying the hand-painted signage of the Mission District. Pablo runs Cubanica, his studio in the East Village, where his clients include the Museum of Modern Art, ESPN, and the New York Times. He enjoys designing fonts, posters, t-shirts, and in 2008, he directed and produced an award-winning film called El Play. In 1999, his typeface designs were exhibited in the Design Triennial at the Cooper Hewitt. Pablo Medina is a self-described designer, artist, teacher, builder, filmmaker, photographer, socializer, lover, cyclist, and traveler. And as I said, his most recent... Oh, a dancer. Oh. As I said, his most recent travels took him to San Francisco, and tonight he'll share with us his reinterpretation of mission signage, incorporating his own journal writings. I really think that you'll enjoy this. So the Type Directors Club is pleased to welcome Pablo Medina.
Thanks, Gil. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. I want to start just by saying some thanks. Thanks to Gail for sort of recommending that I do this. I really appreciate it. It's a real honor to be here at the Type Directors Club. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Speaking to the Is that better? Can you hear? All right. So thanks also to Roberta De Vic for sort of helping organize the event, and also thanks especially to Carol Waller for working tirelessly with, here at the Type Directors Club and organizing, pretty much everything in relation to the Type Directors Club. So thanks. It's a real honor to be here. So many greats have lectured here and have shown their work here, and it's really an honor. So thanks everyone for coming. I'm going to do sort of a quick introduction of myself and of my work, and then I'm going to show you the work from the Artist in Residence program in San Francisco. So that is the contour of Colombia. My mother is from Bogota, Colombia. That's Cuba, and my father is from Havana, Cuba. And I am from Washington, D.C. I was born in Washington, D.C. And spent the first 10 years of my life there, and then moved to Pennsylvania and then New Jersey, and lived in Central Jersey. If anyone is ever, maybe let's see. If anyone is, when you say New Jersey, exactly. Yeah. So, and Central Jersey, by the way, is a very, very boring place. And so I sort of needed the exact opposite of that. And so I moved to Brooklyn to go to art school. But before I went to art school, I did sort of, I'd say, the first graphic design that I had ever done, and without really knowing I was doing graphic design. This is a fanzine that I published in high school, and this is the 4th issue. It's a punk zine. I was in the punk scene in the 80s, I went to a lot of hardcore shows in Trenton, New Jersey, and in Washington, D.C. And that's me doing a hand plant off of the Malcolm X fountain in Washington, D.C., if you know D.C. at all. And that's the first use of typography that I ever did in my life. And I just bought Letraset. This was the 80s, and I just bought, was at an art supply store and just found some Letraset and just, actually was able to typeset the title. That's pretty cool. So in college, I went to Pratt, and I was a printmaking minor and a drawing major, and made lots of art, but I was also in a band. I was in a punk band by the name of the Deviators. And if anybody's been in a band, you guys know that you need lots of promo material and lots of graphics and lots of t-shirts and lots of posters and postcards and all types of things that go along with being in a band. So this is a t-shirt of a tour that we did in 1992, I believe it was. We toured the country. We went from New York to California and back, played 25 cities in about 30 days. The most fun I've ever had in a month, and the least sleep I've ever gotten in a month. But this is a t-shirt from the tour that I designed, and the singer of the band designed the logo. So after college, grad school, studied fine arts undergrad and decided to study graphic design for grad school, also at Pratt. And I was very interested in, as you saw as I started the talk, I was very interested in my heritage, my cultural heritage. I would go to North Bergen, New Jersey very often to visit my aunt, and would walk along Bergen Line Avenue and was sort of inundated by all types of hand-painted signage and lettering and just amazing amounts of sort of popular graphic design. And for my thesis project, I sort of started to just document this stuff photographically. So these are some of the photographs that I took. This was 1994, 95, of Bergen Line Avenue in North Bergen. It's predominantly a Cuban neighborhood, but there's, cultures from all over the world, really, but there's also quite a few different communities of people from Central and South America. But in the 60s, it was established as a Cuban neighborhood. And so with all of those photographs, there were some letter forms that I liked in 3 particular photographs, and spoke it over with my advisor, and he recommended that I design some fonts, which I had never done before. And I kind of like doing things that I've never done before. Something kind of liberating about it. So this is one of the signs, one of the letter forms that I liked, and this was the first font that I ever designed called North Bergen. And this is another sign that I liked quite a bit. And I want you to take a sort of a mental photograph of this for later on in the talk, because you're going to see another sign similar to this 3,000 miles away. But this is another sign that I liked quite a bit, and that's the font that I designed based on the letter forms in that sign. And lastly, this is my favorite of the 3. They are the kings of the Cuban sandwich, is what it says down here. I didn't have the Cuban sandwich there. I was too excited by the type to actually eat. And that's Vitrina. So after grad school, right after grad school, I met David Carson at an art opening, and I knew he used a lot of original typography, and I mentioned that I had designed these fonts, and we got together, and he wanted to license them. So he did. He licensed the 3 fonts for a year, and it was an exclusive license. And so he got use of the fonts exclusive use of the fonts for 1 year. And I have to give a lot of respect to David because he was very, very supportive in my own work, and really, like, that fact that David used these fonts was essential in the development of my own career. Because this was 95, 96, and this was at the peak of his popularity. He was extremely popular at the time, and people started seeing them, and people started liking them. So then they started contacting me, and you know, they wanted to buy them, and I was invited to the Cooper Hewitt exhibition, and I was invited to teach at MICA. So I mean, just that one meeting, and I tell people and my students this all the time, which is, when you have an event like this, when you have an art opening, when you have a party, when you have, you know, a place where you can gather and connect with people and meet people, always go to these, like, professional events, because you really, really never know who you're going to meet. And that, like, just deciding to go to that exhibition that night opened an entire avenue for my career. So, you know, that's, like, pretty important stuff. David used North Bergen for the logo for Blue Magazine, along with a lot of other printed material that he was doing at the time, the AIGA conference in Aspen, and a lot of other stuff, some motion graphic work. So as Gail mentioned, I started to teach at MICA in Baltimore, and then a year later, I was offered a job at Parsons, and that's where I teach now. I've been teaching at Parsons for about 12 years. And I was offered a full-time teaching job, and I was working at Ogilvy at the time. And working at Ogilvy, working in advertising is like boot camp for a graphic designer. It's, you know, it's really intense, and you pull a lot of hours, and there's lots of deadlines, and things are really crazy, and there's a lot of really, really smart people. And it was an amazing learning experience. But I came from the punk scene. I wanted to do my own thing. It was DIY, you know, the whole DIY punk sensibility. So I wanted to do my own thing, so I started Cubanica. And I took the teaching job, and I started Cubanica in the year 2000. And Cubanica is like half commercial work and half independent, self-initiated work. So I'm going to show you just a brief look at a couple of commercial projects for clients. Nast is a men's apparel company from Norwalk, South Norwalk, Connecticut, and they produce many, many T-shirts. And so I think I started working with them in like 02 or 03. And I designed many, many T-shirts for them. They've probably been my most consistent and most lucrative client. So this is just one of the T-shirts that I designed for them. This is a brand typeface that I designed for ESPN. It's called Playoff. It's a 20 style typeface, very different than my other fonts, obviously. And it was the first real typeface that I ever designed. It's been exclusive with them for 3 years. They bought another exclusive 3-year license. And now we're working on extending the styles to 36 styles. I'm working with the font designer, Jeremy Mickle, on extending the styles of Playoff and sort of doing some revisions to it. And we're going to call it Playoff Pro. That's a poster that I designed for the Cooper Hewitt Museum in 04. And as Gail mentioned, this is a documentary that I directed and produced in 2008, all filmed in the Dominican, in a city by the name of San Pedro de Macorís in the Dominican Republic. Freddie is here. Freddie, where are you? Freddie was my assistant on the job, and Freddie was awesome. And he was like the bridge to all the baseball players. We we did a lot of filming in San Pedro, had some great times, and the film was about a young aspiring baseball player. It's a 30-minute short, documentary short, and it was a great experience, and it did well. It won a couple of awards, and it was just making a film, producing a film, promoting a film, and then like getting it out there and showing it at festivals, and was just an amazing experience. So that's El Play. So I consider myself a very fortunate person, and I've been, I'm very grateful for the experiences that I've had in my career path and opportunities that have come my way. And one of those opportunities came about a year and a half ago, which came in the form of, I think, an email, which was just, hey, do you want to do an artist in residence program at CCA, which is one of, I think, 3 art schools in San Francisco, but I'd say the best one, definitely the best one, and said, sure, yeah, I'd like to do that. That would be great. And in college, since I was busy beating the hell out of a guitar in college, I couldn't ever do the Pratt in Venice program, which was a semester in Venice. And man, I always regretted that. So I said, a semester in San Francisco, absolutely. Let me, sign me up. So I knew I wanted to live in the Mission District, and so on January 5th, I moved to San Francisco for 4 months. I'm just gonna translate this. This is a sign from my favorite taqueria in the Mission District called Taqueria Vallarta, and this is one of the many signs that I photographed, and it just gives you a little bit of history of the Mission District. So I'm gonna attempt to translate it. So commissioned by New Spain. New Spain was Mexico. Before Mexico gained its independence. It's called New Spain. So commissioned by New Spain, missionaries traveled the Camino Real, which is a path from Tijuana all the way to San Francisco, and they founded Mission Dolores, which is the church, the first church in San Francisco. It's the oldest building in San Francisco. Mission District is the oldest neighborhood in San Francisco. Let's see, what else does it say? Shortly after, well, the city was, San Francisco was first called Yerba Buena, which means, in Cuban Spanish it means mint, but literally translated it means good weed. Literally it means good weed, but I think, and I'm not sure if it means that in Mexican, but in Cuban Spanish it means mint. So, but that'd be a good thing to like Google, like where did that name come from? And by the way, they smoke a lot of weed in San Francisco. It's like, yeah, it's like Amsterdam, and it's very public, like totally just relaxed about it. So it was first called Yerba Buena, and then the name was changed to San Francisco in memory of the missionaries, the Franciscan monks who established the city. That's why they call it the Mission. Let's see, after some time, a lot of gold miners came because of the gold rush, the California gold rush, and that's why California is called the Golden State. So that's a really brief history of the Mission District, and that's a photograph of the Mission District. I think it sort of sums up the neighborhood. That's Mission Street, where there's a lot of these things that you're going to see in the next few photographs. But I think this is pretty classic San Francisco. It's very urban and lots of hills and lots of palm trees. And it's also a plateau. The Mission District is a plateau, so it's the sunniest neighborhood in San Francisco. It's the warmest neighborhood in San Francisco. The fog usually gathers up around the mountains, and it doesn't always make its way down to the Mission. So signage, lots of signage. The Mission District is a neighborhood that's half hipster and half immigrant. And I think when there are neighborhoods that are half hipster and half immigrant, very, very cool cultural things happen. And certainly there's a lot of very cool cultural things happening in the Mission District. There are lots of these aluminum neon signs. Lots of them are worn and weathered. That's some block letters. That's a Pentecostal church on Mission Street. There's some loose brush letters in a restaurant, in the window of a restaurant. Another one of those big aluminum signs. I don't know, are they aluminum, those big signs? Are they made out of aluminum? I'm not sure what the metal, exactly what the metal is. Steel? Yeah, that's right. So, and lots of neon. That's a pretty well-kept one. The martini glass you see a lot of. A lot of martini glasses. I think that's a West Coast thing. You don't really see, do you see that? Because there are a lot of these signs in New York, but you don't really see the martini glass. I think that's like a West Coast thing. It's kind of a Vegas thing, right? It kind of has a little bit of a Vegas feel to it. The Roxy is on 16th Street. Yeah, it's on 16th, and it's an independent movie theater with lots of great, obscure, independent films. That's what breakfast looks like in the Mission District. More of these signs that once existed for one reason and were repainted, and sort of new neon went up and were, exist now for a different reason. A lot of, chipping paint and sort of weathered and worn. It was a theater of some sort. More sort of, weathered. This one reminded me a bit of Havana because of the ornamental building in the background, and the worn look. Was very similar to some of the signs, some of the very old signs that you see in Havana. I just love the silver-leafed letter forms in this window. I love to see Helvetica repainted. And obviously, you see these old holes. That's where the old neon was, and they just, new owners. So let's rip off the neon and let's paint, Helvetica and open a bar, a Farolito bar. Another taqueria. We did a taco crawl. So I should say that as part of my artisan residence, I taught 2 classes. And we did it the last day of the last class. We did a taco crawl. We went to like 4 or 5 different taquerias, and we judged the tacos in all of the different taquerias. This place was my least favorite. The Guadalajara taqueria was not good at all. This is another restaurant. I love these letters. I just, I love this style. The martini glass again. So remember when you took a mental photograph? Well, if you didn't take the mental photograph, there it is again. So that's North Bergen, and this is on Mission Street in the Mission District. And this is Mexican-owned, and this is Cuban-owned, and yet there are certainly some similar characteristics, and I kind of love that. And there's Helvetica again. Some more signs. Their brush script skills here were a little bit better than their language skills. Greetings of fashions for women and children. Not sure what that means, but I love the letters. A printing shop on, I believe that's Valencia Street. And that's, again, that's my favorite taqueria on 24th Street. How many folks are from San Francisco here? A couple, not too many. So, you know 24th Street. Lots of taquerias on 24th Street. Yeah. That's what lunch looks like in the Mission District. A couple of pork tacos. El Farolito is another well-known Mexican restaurant, sort of chain. And above you see the Virgen de Guadalupe, which is the Catholic icon version of Mexico. You see it everywhere, especially in the Mission. You see her portrait a lot. Another very popular taqueria. Another one of those aluminum or steel signs, neon signs. That's actually not in the Mission, but I liked it. That's in the financial district. Sort of calligraphic letter forms. There's tons and tons and tons of murals in the Mission, which I love. And this is just sort of like, I think it's the information that goes along with the mural. But the murals are incredible. They're really everywhere. And sometimes you'll have an entire building. I think there's one building in the Mission that the whole building is a mural, and it's a 10-story building. Pretty cool. The Curiosity Shop is on Valencia Street, and I bumped into it not knowing that they had used my typeface for, and what I find curious about the process is that the inspiration came from a vitrine, it came from a window, and then, sort of synthesized and went through process and, usage and all that, and then it went back up on a window. So I kind of find that process curious. Yeah. Curiosity Shop now, I think it was bought up by Target. Has anyone seen that stuff? A student sent me an email with that logo in Target, so I thought it was interesting. Does anybody know the Curiosity Shop? Is that like a chain? No, it's actually a store in San Francisco. Yeah. Okay. That's not in the Mission either. That's in Chinatown. That is in the Mission. How are we doing on time? Do you know? What's that? Half an hour? Yeah. Okay. So I like this because it used to be called Jack's, and they instead of changing the sign, they just put an M and changed it to Max. Local diner. Another taqueria. Another one of those old signs. That's what dinner looks like in the Mission District. That's a fried snapper, whole fried snapper, head and eyes and all. So the paintings are hanging up in the gallery in the space here. So after the talk, if there's time, hopefully there's some time, you can take a look at them. The paintings are kind of personal, and so they're kind of like songs. I posted one of the paintings a couple of weeks ago on Facebook, and somebody wrote, "Are they all so sad?" And I just responded by saying, well, they're like songs. Some of them are sad songs, and some of them are love songs, and some of them are happy songs, and they vary. But certainly they are they're about internal investigation and about emotions. They're emotional. So to talk about the schedule, like I was teaching 4 days a week at CCA, and so Friday was my painting day. So instead of doing what I usually do, what I've done for the past 12 or so, 15 years, going and working in front of a computer, I would go into the fine art studio and paint, which was a pleasure. It was an amazing pleasure to work with a brush on paper again and work completely analog. Friday was an entirely analog day, except for my phone. But I tried to keep the email checking to a minimum, and I just painted. So, and the way it worked was kind of similar to the process with my thesis project. I just almost intuitively chose a sign that I liked, and then sort of interpreted it, and I do a lot of journal writing. So the content of the paintings came from, like, I would flip through my journal and find a phrase that I liked, find a phrase that spoke to me. I should also say that before that I left for San Francisco, I went through a pretty hard time emotionally. And so I needed my work to be cathartic. I needed it to be therapy. And so this was therapy, really. This was like my therapy. And it worked. It was really, really helpful. It was me looking into the things that I had written in my journal and recreating them and connecting some dots, because there's the love for the signage, and then there's the internal investigation, and I wanted to, for a long time, I've been wanting to put those two together, and I didn't really have the right platform to do it, and I found the platform, and so that's what these are. And again, I would just choose signs that I liked, and the next painting is a combination of two signs, and that's a really, really gruesome illustration of pigs cooking themselves, cannibal pigs. Yeah, but which I like, actually. I think it's kind of funny, but I like the letters more. I like the letters more. So. And that's the painting. That's sort of an homage to Joseph Campbell. I'm a big Joseph Campbell fan. That's on Mission Street, and that's the interpretation. If I'm going too fast, because this is, sort of a reading process, as much as it is a visual process. So let me know if I'm going too fast. There's lots of letterpress posters like these promoting local bands, and actually for my talk at CCA, I got this poster company who are called the Colby Poster Printing from LA to create a sign for my talk at CCA. And there's lots of these all over the Mission District, and I love them. And they're made from wood type, and the background is, you obviously can't see with the projector, but it's super fluorescent orange, and that's the recreation. And gold leaf numbers, and that's the recreation. Another one of those signs. This one in good shape. I don't know how old it is, but it looks pretty old. And they love their old things in San Francisco. The streetcars and the signs, and there was a barber shop that I would go to that was like right out of 1920. And they're functional old things. They're working old things. Some of them are original, like the streetcars. And some of them are not, like the barbershop. What wasn't original, but it might as well have been. And that's the interpretation. That's on Mission Street. And that's the interpretation. Does anybody know the artist Jonathan Harris? Yeah. I saw Jonathan Harris speak at CCA while I was there. And his work is very complex and has a lot of different themes and subject matter. But one of the things that he's interested in is showing human beings' vulnerabilities. And I thought that his work does that in a really beautiful and really eloquent way. And as is, I think, normal in the creative process, I was doubting myself, doubting my, I don't know, sort of having concerns about exposing myself, sharing myself too much. And after seeing his talk, those concerns went away because there was a lot of that going on, and he was very passionate about that. He kind of compared it. He was like, it's the anti-Facebook. Maybe because on Facebook, everyone's always happy and everyone's always like, you know, there are all these great pictures of people and it's like showing them in their best light. And he was talking about how, you know, like the other side, right? The more, I guess, the more human side, or the side that we don't see. Both are human, but the side that we don't see. That's the side of a truck. San Francisco is a very inclusive city. Very different than New York. New York's very, very culturally diverse, obviously, as is San Francisco, but there's an inclusivity when it comes to culture in San Francisco that was a pleasure. It was a real pleasure. That's another sign from Chinatown. That's from a streetcar. That's a Guatemalan and Salvadorian restaurant on Mission Street. That's, let me see if I remember, 17th Street and South Van Ness. And it also has a very West Coast feel to me. You wouldn't see a sign like that in New York. It has an almost American graffiti kind of drive-in, you know, burger joint kind of, yeah, I mean, 1955 feel to it. And this is the last of the series. This is also on Mission Street. And so I was fortunate enough to have been able to exhibit these paintings in San Francisco at the end of my stay. And I loved San Francisco, but I'm a New Yorker, definitely. I had a couple of Woody Allen moments. If you've seen Annie Hall, at the end of Annie Hall, when Woody Allen flies out to LA and he's like trying to drive and just all over the place, and he's like getting a headache because he's a New Yorker, and it's like he just can't get into San Francisco. I mean, California. And I, like I said, I love the city, but I was missing New York. And so as a way of sort of reconnecting with my city, the next series that I do will be based on New York. And so I did 20 based on the Mission District. And I'm now moving on to New York. And the thing that I'm photographing here in New York are the doors of cement trucks and of construction trucks, which are really, really amazing. And so, I just finished the first painting of this series, and I'm pretty happy with it. And I've moved on, so these paintings are on paper. They're gouache on paper, 8 by 10, and these are bigger. They're on plywood, and they're a bit bigger. And they're, these are some of those photographs. And I'm usually on my bike when I photograph these things, and I'm usually pissing people off by stopping and like photographing them. In fact, today, a guy that was driving the truck was really annoyed that I was photographing his door. And that one I just took yesterday. I quite loved. Like I said, the paintings are on the wall. They were these are the culmination of the 4 months in San Francisco, and I'm going to shamelessly promote them and say that they're available for sale. So if you're interested in purchasing one of them, you can talk to me and we can talk business afterwards. But they're just sort of like I said, my internal investigation, emotional investigation, and my love of street signage and popular culture combined. That's where they are. That's how they were made. That was the process. And I don't know, I wasn't going to read this, but I will. I'll read it because again, like I said, I'm a Joseph Campbell fan, and so many of his ideas have inspired me.